My brother Carl is something else. He's a prankster, a goofball, a ladies' man, a bookworm, a movie lover, an artist, a foodie, and a joke teller. Actually, he's the one who laughs the most at his own jokes. Usually they're just random repetitions of phrases someone else has already said with his own nouns inserted. Sort of like your mom jokes, except way more humane and creative. For example, one time our family was leaving the movie theater together, and I commented, "That was a pretty great movie." Carl responded by saying, "No, Frank, you're a pretty great movie." Carl is fearless. He'll go up and talk to anyone, and he loves to meet strangers. For example, when it comes to dancing, he is a huge ladies' man. He swaggers up to the ladies with a ton of confidence, huge grin on his face. He puts his hand out, he cocks his head sideways, and he says, "May I dance?" Carl is also the giver of many hugs. One time, my brother and my dad were at an outdoor concert together, and Carl ran over to this biker dude who was standing with his arms crossed. He was absolutely covered in tattoos. Carl grabbed this guy's arm and started pointing at all the different designs. This one's a dragon, and this one's a lion, and this one's a spider. And then he looked the biker in the eyes and he said, "Your tattoos are so cool." And then he hugged the guy, and the biker's eyes started welling up with tears. Carl wears his heart on his face. If he is sad, he looks sad. If he is angry, he looks angry. This makes for a lot of confrontations and cranky moments. For example, one time our family was trying to take a picture at the zoo, and Carl was not having a good day. And so when we asked him to smile, he gave us this face that made him look like he was constipated, like something like this. It was hilarious. Carl never pretends everything is okay. When he is hurt, you can tell, and it's heartbreaking. When Carl is hurt by someone's words, he looks like he's been physically wounded. He hangs his head, his face looks pained, his whole posture changes, and he cries, just like when he actually gets hurt. By now, you're probably thinking something is up with this kid, Carl. Well, Carl has Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a disability that affects individuals differently, but most, like Carl, have speech impediment and intellectual delay. But I think Carl has something else. Something that all of us need more of. You see, without even trying, Carl shines a light brighter than any other person I know. Carl shines a light brighter than any other person I know. Sure, I've grown through learning how to live with a brother with a disability, but much more than that. I've learned from Carl what it means to truly live. I've grown not in spite of my brother's disability, but because of it. Today, I'd like to share with you what we can learn from people with disabilities. I believe that if we can understand what makes people like Carl special, we'll have far happier lives, far deeper relationships, and far more peace. The things I see in Carl are difficult for most of us to do. They're countercultural and socially risky, but 100% worth it. Here are 5 habits we can learn from people with disabilities. Number 1, laugh at your own jokes. Laugh at your own jokes. So much of the way we do life is based off of what other people think of us. We walk around in this self-conscious cloud, making sure that no one has any reason to think less of us. A joke that no one laughs at is not worth telling, right? Wrong. Look at Carl. Carl tells whatever joke he wants, whenever he wants, and doesn't care if the people around him are too stuck up to laugh or not. He's not being selfish in this. Carl is just doing show and tell. He is giving to us a taste of what gives him joy. He tells jokes not because he wants other people to think more of him, but because he wants to give more of himself. It's like being the opposite of selfish. Now, you might be thinking right now, I know a few people that laugh at their own jokes and they are anything but selfless. Well, let me remind you, Carl has something special. Something that all of us need more of, that only he has, remember? Well, we're not there quite yet, but when we get there, you'll see. For now, it's safe to conclude that laughing at your own jokes completely changes the way we do life. Instead of trying to get laughter, we give joy. And if our joy is spurned by the people around us, then it's their loss, not ours. Life is not about what you can get. It's about what you can give. Number 2, don't filter curiosity. Carl doesn't have doubts like, what will she think, or what will he do? The assumptions we all get stuck in our head about race, about gender, about culture, about age, are not things Carl cares about. One time, when Carl was younger, our family entered the elevator with a pregnant woman. And the first thing in Carl's mind, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "Mommy, why is that woman so fat?" And my mom was like, "Honey, shh, you can't say that." But I don't blame him. Carl doesn't filter his curiosity. When he notices something is up with someone, something is wrong, something is different, he doesn't hesitate or worry about what the results might be. The world needs more people who wonder why things are the way they are. When we don't filter curiosity, life is better because we're seeking the truth wholeheartedly and unabashedly. Number 3, wear your heart on your face. We live in a culture of masks. We are all professional actors in a giant game of pretend. We all have problems. We all have addictions. We all have bad memories. We all have been hurt and will continue to be hurt, but we all pretend that we're perfect. Carl has this amazing effect on people. He makes them realize they don't have to pretend. We hide who we truly are so other people can't hurt us. But when we wear our heart on our face, it lets other people into our heads and into our hearts. It makes us vulnerable, but it makes us real. It makes us beautiful and colorful and true. Number 4, be vulnerable. Everybody loves the hero in a good movie, the one who always does the right thing and defeats the bad guys. Everyone loves the athlete that completely demolishes the competition. This is a dog-eat-dog culture. We have to push other people down to bring ourselves up. Carl simply does not participate in this. Carl knows he has Down syndrome. Carl knows he likes food too much. Carl knows he can't run nearly as fast as I can. But Carl doesn't hide his weaknesses. He embraces them. Now, I'll have you know, Carl is no wussy. He is a hunter, a ladies' man, as I have already mentioned, a public speaker, and a lobbyist. Carl lobbied for the Achieving Better Life Experience Act, which enables disabled individuals to save money for their futures. He spoke on the steps of our state capitol in support of the ABLE Act. And the National Down Syndrome Society paid to fly him to DC so that he could lobby there. Carl has spoken on hundreds of other platforms. How can Carl be so successful, so strong, so able if he embraces his weaknesses? Chew on that for a bit. It doesn't make sense. Well, one way to think about it is this. Cultures set standards for success. They say, this is what it means to be a successful businessman or woman. This is what it means to be a successful athlete. This is what it means to be successful in your social circles. Well, Carl's weak, and that he doesn't meet any of these standards of expectations. But Carl is strong, and that he doesn't care about any of these standards or expectations. Carl doesn't let the culture define his strengths and weaknesses. When Carl was speaking on the steps of our state capitol, he wasn't thinking, oh, I hope I'm meeting all the standards of all these people watching me. I mean, sure, he was nervous, but his desire was to communicate how he felt. communicate his thoughts, not what would make everyone else think more of him. When we look at Carl, we see that being vulnerable doesn't make us dumb or powerless or less able. It makes us stronger, more powerful, and even more able. It makes us smarter, more powerful, and even more able. It makes us effective communicators, authentic leaders, and faithful friends. Lastly, and most importantly, number 5, love people. This is what ties it all together. It's the glue that makes everything stick. If Carl didn't love people, then everything good about him would become bad. If Carl laughed at his own jokes but didn't have love, if Carl laughed at his own jokes because he wanted other people to think more of him, to think more of him, to laugh with him, then he would be self-obsessed. The reason Carl tells jokes in the first place is because he loves people. If Carl didn't filter his curiosity but didn't have love, then he would come across as rude and uncaring. It is because of Carl's love that he doesn't filter his curiosity in the first place. And Carl's love makes it apparent that the reasons he asks the questions he asks are not out of selfish intent or malicious intent, but out of love. If Carl wore his heart on his face but didn't have love, then he'd just be grumpy and annoying all the time. Carl's love makes his transparency beautiful. It is Carl's love that makes being transparent worth it. If Carl was vulnerable but didn't have love, then he'd just be one more person constantly falling short of everybody else's expectations. Because Carl loves people, he doesn't fake that he is strong. Without love, everything about Carl doesn't make sense. Love is painful, love is time-consuming, and love is awkward. But it's so, so worth it. One time, my mom and my brother were at the funeral of a renowned businessman's wife in Atlanta, Georgia. When they entered the funeral home, my mom let go of Carl's hand for a moment to sign into the guest book. And when she looked down, Carl was gone. This is every mom's worst nightmare. And then she saw him. Carl had cut past the line of people that wound around the room to view the casket. He had climbed up the side of the casket and had his arm inside, stroking the dead woman on the arm. The woman's husband, who was still living, stood a few feet away. When he noticed Carl, he started crying uncontrollably. Of course, Carl noticed him, and Carl climbed down from the casket, ran over to him, jumped up into his arms, and gave him a bear hug. The guy just cried and cried and cried into Carl's shoulder. He'd stop crying, and he'd look at Carl, and Carl would smile at him and hug him even tighter. And then he'd keep crying again. Eventually, the man put Carl down. But that night, that businessman said something to my mom that she won't ever forget. He said this: "Atlanta's finest came to say goodbye to my wife, but only one little boy let me cry." Love was made to be shared, and Carl was made to share love. This is it. This must be the thing that we were looking for. The thing that Carl has that all of us need more of. It's love. Loving people makes life better because at the end of the day, there's nothing more beautiful than giving someone your whole true self and watching them give their whole true self back. To review, laugh at your own jokes. Don't filter curiosity. Wear your heart on your face, be vulnerable, and love people. I dream of a world where everyone is a little more like Carl. A world that's a little deeper, a little more beautiful, a little more colorful, a little more peaceful. A world where everyone was made to share love. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Thank you.